While many people contributed to the story of our founding years, we recognize that time limits our recounting many more stories than we can tonight, and limits our taking note of all who were important during our early years. We hope those who can add to the story and provide personal reflections will do so by sending them to Sean, so that we can include them in the recorded history of Beth Jacob. A special thanks to Julie Swiler from the Jewish Federation of Greater St. Paul, who is video recording this presentation, and certainly to Sean for all his help in planning so many details of this evening. We want to tell you a fascinating story. Since the founding years of Beth Jacob, many who have since joined the congregation may be unaware of the events and the excitement of this important period. Along with many others who were among the founders and early members, we see the celebration of Rabbi Allen's and Phyllis's presence in the congregation's life as an opportunity to recount our founding values and tell the story. To the extent that we have been successful is a reflection of those values and wise partnership between the diverse Beth Jacob community and Rabbi Allen. Paraphrasing the Haggadah statement, which is in every generation one must look upon oneself as if he or she personally had come out of Egypt, we want to be able to capture the excitement of those years and events as we tell the story in a way that we can relive those moments as if all of us had been there. I'd like, just for a moment, to ask all of those who were there at the beginning of Beth Jacob to stand so that others can see who you are. The others who were there at the beginning, many have died. The photos on the back wall of our social hall will remind you of many of those who have died. Then I'd like to ask all of those who have joined after those early years to stand. So that's going to be, I think, all of us.
Once a junkyard, and once a school, a minion in a chapel, and a struggling shul. Some were teachers, and some were seekers, some once-a-year folks, some once-a-weekers.
Our pre-story takes note of the previous connections between members of a Wednesday noontime study group known affectionately as the Junkyard Rashi Group, which met at the Kaplan Scrapyard on Shepherd Road, where Reuben Kaplan was our host. Our teachers included its founder, Rabbi Mordecai Miller from Temple of Aaron, and then Yossi Gordon. Earl Schwartz taught us for 1 year while Yossi was in Israel. Bud Sweet and I and Sal Ginsberg first met each other there. Others got acquainted at the short-lived chapel meeting of Temple of Aaron. The Beth Jacob story really began when Bud and I had a conversation in late 1983 or early 84, followed by a gathering of members of Sons of Jacob Congregation, Temple of Aaron, Shari Shalom, and others to explore the question, is there a need for a new traditional conservative congregation in St. Paul? The consensus was positive, and to help us further decide, we sent letters by regular mail. Emails were just beginning to others who might be interested.
With our Zucchini, with our youth, with Maury, Larry, Bud, and Ruth, many doubts and such improbability, upstart congregation in a communal facility.
At that time, it was a confluence of circumstances. Various individuals and groups were interested. Sons of Jacob congregation, an Orthodox congregation turned conservative, had an aging and shrinking membership. It had sold its synagogue building and was meeting at the St. Paul JCC. By this time it had no rabbi, but had land on which to build, financial assets from the sale of its building, many Torah scrolls and other holy books, and most important of all, a long history and tradition and a group of very dedicated people who had sustained the congregation despite its dislocation. Many of them became models of hospitality. Older former Sons of Jacob members adopted the younger members and their children. Remember to take a look at their photos and personal reflections on the rear wall of the social hall. We'll tell you more about some of them as the narrative progresses. Others were also interested. Native Twin Cityans, including members of the Temple of Aaron Chapel Minyan, who saw the need for an alternative. People from Shaarei Shalom congregation, a small congregation without walls. Many of its members have double membership in Beth Jacob. People who had moved to the Twin Cities from elsewhere and were unaffiliated with the congregation. A substantial number of young families, many of whom had children in the community Talmud Torah of St. Paul. Individuals who read Torah with skill, respected rabbis and Jewish educators. In short, we had a core group of leaders with all ages represented, almost all of whom participated in Shabbat morning services in one way or another, and had a collective experience of what works, what doesn't work, and concepts of what would be ideal. In addition, each brought life experiences, lessons learned from them, and reflections about all of this. Of these people, many took leadership roles in getting the ball rolling, including Bud Sweet, who had recently retired as president of Republic Airlines. But for Bud and his son-in-law Tom Smith and Larry would not have become physician partners. Tom played a key role in the early Beth Jacob years. More about Bud later. In addition, this group included people with skills in framing and verbalizing concepts to provide a context for the new congregation, skills in getting things done, and the ability to turn concepts into reality.
But it wasn't easy. Those few words sort of speak volumes. When after months of negotiation, the leadership of Sons of Jacob and the group of others could not yet agree on many matters, the new group, now called New Conservative Congregation, started its own Shabbat morning service in the library of the St. Paul JCC, down the hall from Sons of Jacob's service in the war veterans room. Soon, though, both groups agreed to have Shabbat morning services together, each group alternating weeks to lead the service. This period of time brought the opportunity not only to daven together, but also to get to know and appreciate each other as individuals and to become friends. The concept of davening together actually becomes a useful metaphor for any difficult situation with contending parties, a way of getting to know the other outside the contentious issues, and of developing respect and affection for the other. Ultimately, over a year's time, and with the help of Mel Silver, an older attorney who had everyone's trust, the two groups agreed to merge, and representatives from Sons of Jacob and the New Conservative Congregation signed the papers on July 10, 1985, quote, with a feeling of warmth and respect for the values of each individual member, regardless of the congregational origin.
A little Aaron, lit by Helen, in by 9, maybe out by 11 or so with short announcements. Sweet plainness, plastic gloves, precious moments, and sacred hours.
We founded this new congregation, Beth Jacob, with these values and ideals in mind. We sought to build a community. We saw the new congregation as one in which all would share a covenantal relationship with each other and with God, to study, to pray, and to do acts of charity and loving kindness. Thanks to Rabbi Michael Goldberg, then at St. John's University, for guiding us to this covenantal formulation. By committing ourselves to this covenant, we intended to use Torah as our blueprint. We recognized that study of Torah and use of its lessons and moral direction would provide a timeless source from which we would learn more about Judaism, where we would apply the lessons to our daily lives and find the support of the community during times of need and times of celebration. In fact, our membership application was headed by this statement: membership in Beth Jacob recognizes an implied covenant among its members to participate in acts of Torah study, avodah, meaningful worship and work, and gemilut chasadim, acts of loving kindness. We recognize that this covenant would have different meanings for each person, and the level of commitment might vary by person and by time. And we expected that movement would be towards greater depth of involvement in these mitzvot. By committing ourselves to this covenant, we hope to exercise more vigorously our obligation to the congregational community, to visit the sick, and provide for those in need. By committing ourselves to this covenant, we hope to strengthen our ability to teach our children and be their spiritual examples. In this type of covenantal context, bar and bat mitzvah would not be an end, but rather a milestone for their undertaking of greater spiritual obligations as adults.
So, we sought to build a community that would be egalitarian in all respects, male and female, and children, engaged and empowered. Women would have a place equal to men, including aliyot and other roles in congregational life. And this commitment in itself represented a substantial change and movement for many former Sons of Jacob members. It wasn't easy for some of them. And as we know, it hasn't been sufficient into itself. But our commitment to these egalitarian principles have allowed us to move and understand them differently and more broadly as we address the needs of others in our community who have felt marginalized. And we've all grown over the years. A community in which celebration of Shabbat would be a focus. And Beth Jacob would encourage observance of the mitzvot and the customs surrounding Shabbat, both at home and in shul. A community in which there would be no financial barriers to membership. Full participation, regardless of economic status. A community that values modesty in its celebration. In that context, Kiddushim on Shabbat, in which a simcha had been celebrated, would be events for all those present at the regular service, not an invited guests-only event. Community, community, community. In short, we wanted to build a welcoming community to enhance our awareness of things spiritual, to seek companionship at times of joy and comfort at times of sorrow, a community of scholars and learners, and most of all, a community of Jews with shared values, the obligation to do for others, to attach the proper ethical weight to each of our activities, and to extend hospitality, a welcoming community. To this end, our first Gabbai, Sid Goldfarb, consistently greeted strangers at Shabbat morning services, connected them with, quote, regulars, took great joy in any new person who came in the door, offered them aliyot, a tradition that continues to this day. And although we didn't recognize it at first, we were fairly unconventional. We came to recognize the value of intergenerational relationships. Nobody planned it, it just happened. And we loved it, and we valued it. And that continues. New friendships, seeing others as potential sources of advice and wisdom, and role models of ethical behavior, generosity, spiritual intensity, and openness, and fun.
decisions and actions. In the first year following merger, our office moved from a broom closet at the St. Paul JCC to a small upstairs space of a nearby ambulance manufacturing company petitioned into a business and rabbi's office. We formed the board of trustees with equal members from both groups, and we became a member of the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, the congregational arm of the conservative movement. I was the first president, and Bud succeeded me. Never explicitly discussed, nonetheless assumed. We had no professional chazan. Rather, members of the congregation acted in that role. On high holy days, Joe Goldrich, who had been chazan for Sons of Jacob, continued. Henry Ertelt, Milt McKeesky, and Sam Sukir were his choir. More members learned to be shlichei tzibur, those who would lead the liturgy, chant Torah and Haftorah readings, and give divrei Torah. Our Shabbat morning service in the JCC War Veterans Room evolved into one that was stimulating, evocative of discovery and kavanah, and a real fellowship of worshipers. Earl Schwartz became our scholar in residence, who each week described in detail a part of the service, its historical content, its reason for being, and its relationship to each of us who was part of the service. For children in kindergarten through 6th grade, we established a Shabbat morning educational program rather than a Sunday school meeting, and they met on alternate weeks. In that way, both children and their parents would come to shul on Shabbat. To lead this group, define its curriculum and goals, and act as a role model, we hired our first teacher. We valued education for both children and adults, truly lifelong learning. We developed a close working relationship with the Talmud Torah of St. Paul and its leadership. With that relationship, we were able to avoid duplication of services, take advantage of the skills of the Talmud Torah faculty, complement and reinforce our own program, and use all these resources to answer the educational needs of our children. For adults, we would take advantage of both Beth Jacob-based and wider community-based resources.
In choosing priorities, we had to make a decision. What was more important to get first, a rabbi or a building? Well, we acted strategically. We committed ourselves to finding a rabbi by July of 1986, 32 years ago. To focus our search, we defined our expectations for that person. The rabbi was a person to set the spiritual, moral, and halachic environment of the congregation, and they needed to be an excellent scholar, an educator, and a pastoral presence in our community. We want to grow with our congregation, to participate in the excitement that we all felt, and to watch our new congregation evolve, to become part of a group that was committed to those goals you just saw and that we've been speaking to. Bud Sweet, from the former New Conservative congregation, and Saul Mintzberg, from the former Sons of Jacob congregation, co-chaired a rabbi search committee. Oh, that was a spoiler. Okay, so we chose well. Rabbi Morris Allen was selected in the spring of 1986 and moved to St. Paul in August with Phyllis and baby Avi, now Abba Avi. Soon after the rabbi's arrival, he began to oversee the spiritual life and enhance the sense of community here.
To fully understand our decision to accept the position at Beth Jacob in 1986, college until we moved to St. Paul, our religious lives were dominated by self-created Jewish communities that nurtured us and stood in opposition to the prevailing tendencies then current in conservative congregations. During college, we were both involved in serious alternative Jewish life. Morris lived in a Jewish co-op in Madison, and I was among the first generation of women Torah readers at Brandeis, learning from Amy Auer. In 1977, while living in Boston after college, we were founders of a minion called the SCAD Minion. Somerville, Cambridge, Austin, Brooklyn, and Brighton that met twice a month on Shabbat mornings and homes, followed by a wonderful Shabbat potluck lunch. That minion is still in existence, now called Minion Shamey. When I started medical school in Chicago in 1978, I was a founder of the Egalitarian Minion in West Rogers Park, another minion that continues to this day. When we moved to New York, we were among the founders, a group of founders of the Minyan Hamaki at Anshe Chesed Synagogue. This minion did not continue when some of the founders moved away and other leaders were invited to join Minyan Ma'at, also meeting at Anshe Chesed. Finally, when we lived in Riverdale, which was our last stop before moving to St. Paul, together with Rabbi Gordon Tucker and his wife Amy Cohn, we were founders of the Riverdale Egalitarian Minion in the basement of the Conservative Synagogue of Riverdale. In short, since we left our parents' homes in 1973 and headed off to college, both of us are part of the changing American Jewish landscape that saw the traditional conservative congregation as non-reflective of our own religious needs, desires, and style.
The irony of all that, of course, was that I was studying to be a conservative rabbi at the flagship of the conservative movement, the Jewish Theological Seminary. For both of us, having been raised as children of the movement, having been influenced by the same rabbinical students and religious thinkers that were during our adolescence, coming under the powerful tutelage of significant Hillel rabbis of Wisconsin, in my case, Alan Lutovsky, and in the case of Phyllis at Brandeis, of Al Atzaret. And having been at the vanguard of the emerging egalitarian trend within conservative Judaism, it was not clear we would ever find a shul that met our religious needs and, most importantly, our religious dreams. In the summer of 1985, as Phyllis began her final year as her pediatric residency as chief resident at Einstein, we realized that we were going to have to make decisions about our future. Having decided to wait to have children until after Phyllis was done with her residency, our lives began to look for clarity in the midst of what pretended to be a chaotic year. I was asked by then Chancellor of JTS, Dr. Gerson Cohen, Alav Shalom, to stay in my position as Director of Recruitment and Leadership and Development at the seminary, but only if I would begin pursuing a PhD in a field enabling me to rise in the academic ranks of the seminary. Shortly thereafter, Chancellor Cohen announced that he was retiring as a result of illness. The unrest it created seemed to work against pursuing a PhD, leading to a full-time academic position at the seminary. Benefactors mattered, and Gerson Cohen wasn't going to be there. And by the time Ismar Shorich was selected as the succeeding chancellor, and he reaffirmed Chancellor Cohen's offer, my search for another position was well underway.
So that meant looking for a shul. And lo and behold, there was one very interesting opportunity. A congregation that wrote a very compelling letter about itself that spoke to many of the values that we held dear. That congregation was Beth Jacob. That letter, penned by Larry Savet, spoke about a community where Shabbat was the centerpiece of the religious life of the community, where congregational participation was paramount, where egalitarian was assumed, and where the golden rule of shul life was to be replaced by a sincere desire to ensure that there would be no economic barriers to involvement and to leadership itself.
Beth Jacob had the additional appeal of being in the Midwest. For the two of us, born and bred on Midwestern Jewish values, we thought of staying in the East. The thought of staying in the East was unappealing to us and was not a place we wanted to raise our children. While we knew a few Minnesota people from our Ramah days, neither of us had strong connections to Minnesota other than my cousins. We did know Yossi from our camp days, and his influence on us back then was significant. But in the intervening years, we had lost touch and communicated mostly by rumor. I had met Earl and Nina in 1983 at a conference held in JTS, and even had to role play being Nina's brother in a real fake family dynamic. Two additional connections to Beth Jacob, however, also indicated the hidden connection that we might call the divine presence that brought us here. One was that at a Shabbat dinner with Ismar and Sally Shorish in January of 1985. Ismar mentioned that his niece was a physician in Minnesota and that she had just had her first child, but unfortunately that his sister, the grandmother of the baby, had taken ill while being in Minnesota. That niece was Leslie Hahn. And a year later, when I said I was interviewing for this position, he said, "Great, try to get my niece involved in a shul." Leslie and Merrill have been a wonderful part of our shul from the start. The second hidden connection occurred during a rabbinical school interview with a woman applying for admission. She spoke about davening at a new shul in St. Paul, where an elderly Holocaust survivor was the gabbai one Shabbat when she had had an aliyah, and he said, "I can't believe my eyes that this is happening." She didn't go on to rabbinical school, but in the intervening years, we got to know Sam Sadie of blessed memory quite well. Indeed, after Rosh Hashanah in 1991, Sam called Phyllis and said he wanted to learn high holiday trub for Laney and asked her to make a tape for him. We couldn't believe our ears.
Making the decision to come to Beth Jacob was coupled with the willingness to take a risk. It was clearly a show that spoke to our hearts. It was clearly a show that needed a great deal of rabbinic leadership and work. It was clearly a show that we would imagine we would have joined had we already been living in St. Paul. And it was clearly a place where, for a couple of years, we could get our feet wet in the show world and decide what it was that we wanted to do moving forward. We made the decision to accept the offer, not without a little trepidation, but also with the thought that since most startups don't make it, and we were young enough to move on and fail. We moved here. I didn't have a job yet as a pediatrician, and Morris was really unsure if the financial model and the membership number on the piece of paper were all correct. After Avi was born in June of 1986, I began to send out some feelers for jobs, and when we arrived in August, I started interviewing and accepted a position at that time with Aspen Medical Group in St. Paul. 32 years later, I'm still working at my first and only job here, even as Morris now completes his 32 years working at his job here. We feel blessed to have taken the risk, thinking that it might not work, and saying that not only did it work, but it has been a blessing for us, and we believe for the unfolding of the Jewish message still being written.
Commitment between Rabbi Allen and the congregation came an additional commitment to nurture that relationship with periodic informal meetings. In this gathering, Rabbi Allen, the shul president, and the co-chairs of the Rabbi Search Committee, all of whom have already established a warm relationship, met 3 to 4 times a year to share perceptions about how things were going and identify and discuss solutions to unsolved issues. With Rabbi Allen as catalyst, and with the involvement of so many others, the Shabbat morning service deepened in participation and content, and Shabbat morning children's program expanded, and an adult education program began, including classes on Torah reading and synagogue skills. Now I want to talk about chesed. If you walk into the Beth Jacob kitchen, you'll see on the far wall, just to the right of the sinks, a Sears cold spot upright freezer. Here's the story of how it came to be there. Not long after Rabbi Allen became our rabbi in 1986, he suggested that we form a chesed committee as a way of reaching out to members of the congregation who might have been ill or moved into a new home or had a new baby. I had the honor of chairing that activity for a number of years. The plan was to bring a Shabbat dinner to the homes of these members of our community. Rabbi Allen's idea was that these acts of kindness would also serve as a catalyst for members of our congregation to reach out to others on their own. At that time, I believe that no other shul in St. Paul had a committee of that sort. We prepared both meat and vegetarian meals and dessert and froze them to be delivered when needed. But we had no building yet, let alone having a freezer in which to store them. One of our early families, former sons of Jacob members, Sam and Goldie Rosenthal, offered a freezer in their garage and a key to open the side door to the garage, so we were free to come and go without disturbing their family. And that's the freezer that you see in the kitchen today. We moved it into our new building 30 years ago. We prepared the food initially at the JCC. Working together on these meals also was a way of connecting with new people and adding to our sense of community. We had one group who would cook and bake, and other individuals deliver the meals, also providing an opportunity to visit. One card of thanks that was sent by a family who had just had a new baby was particularly touching, as they related that having that Shabbat meal gave them the feeling that they were having Shabbat dinner with our congregation. This Hesed activity is but one example of Rabbi Allen's role in connecting members of our community. The meal preparation and delivery now continues in a different form, but is motivated still by the same values. In addition, Hesed work now includes members volunteering to serve breakfast to the homeless at Dorothy Day Center and a robust social justice committee agenda. As for the freezer, inside it is a sign that states, Sears will only guarantee the replacement of parts for 15 years. It wasn't new when we got it over 30 years ago. And I think the reason it's still working now is that it's been used for doing this with us.
Greener pastures, greener fields. Gorin, Allen, Mayberg, Shields. At the outset, as you've heard, the congregation recognized the need for a synagogue building. And after an unsuccessful search led by Leonard Oppenheimer for an alternative site in St. Paul proper, we settled on the 6-acre site in Mendota Heights that had been previously donated to Sons of Jacob. Sons of Jacob also had substantial funds available for construction, which was of great help. And Bud Sweet and Maury Lapidus, who had retired as executive director of the St. Paul United Jewish Fund and Council, oversaw the additional fundraising, with many volunteers soliciting building donations from others. Nina and I, who hailed from the New Conservative Congregation, and Maury and Ruth Risham, formerly of Sons of Jacob, co-chaired the building committee. And from the start, the committee gathered congregants' thoughts, opinions, perspectives about the goals and design of the new building. From a number of interested architects who submitted proposals, the congregation chose Jerry Mayberg and Michael Shields, two experienced young Jewish architects who were thrilled by the opportunity to design a synagogue building. And ground was broken for this building on October 25th, 1987, 2 years after the merger. September 2nd through 4th, 1988, the synagogue building was dedicated in a ceremony based in wedding traditions. The ketubah that was signed that day hangs in the lobby. We'd like to reflect for a moment on the values that guided the building of our building, rooted first of all in Jewish history and traditional practice. As the prophet Yeshayahu said, "Su'u marom einechem uro'u." Lift your eyes upward and see. Consider the sanctuary where we're now gathered. And give a listen to our dear friend, Ruth Rishon.
I think my contribution was the shape of the sanctuary, because I had an idea and I spoke to the architects and they liked it. So when I'm in the synagogue, I look up and I see there's my idea in wood and stone. The idea was that we should have a reference to the Ashkenazi synagogues in Europe. Now, when I was in Los Angeles, walking along Wilshire Boulevard, I saw this synagogue that belonged to a Sephardic congregation, and it looked very Oriental in style, and I thought, how appropriate. We were being mostly Ashkenazim. We needed a reference to the synagogues in Europe. And the wooden synagogues in Europe have like a roof upon roof. So I said there should be a hipped roof and then clear-story windows over the reading table, and then the roof continues to a point. And they thought that was a very good idea.
Our dear friend, Ruth Rishon, Zichrona Livracha. Nina and I so deeply appreciated the opportunity to work with and learn from Ruth and more.
So, we invite you to look around the building. What we might see are surfaces of all sorts. But we'd like to tell you a little bit more about where some of them came from and what lies within them. From the beginning, it was clear that if our actions didn't embody our values, then our values weren't really our values at all. So Earl asked us to look upward. When one of the members of our building committee, Henry Ortelt, who had been in concentration camps throughout the Holocaust, looked at the design of the outside of the building, what he saw, he came to us and said, I can't daven in that building. I can't walk into that building and it cannot be my shul. It was too much. What Ruth Rishel saw and what was, in fact, a traditional Eastern European synagogue building with clear-story windows as you see them now, to Henry, it looked like the clear-story windows that allowed light into the barracks at Auschwitz. We realized that we needed to respect Henry's experience, as well as that of his wife Inga, Sam and Mary Sadie, and other Holocaust survivors in our congregation. So what to do? Our architects came to the rescue with a new line to the drawing. You don't see it from the inside, but you see a slightly different picture from the outside. They added a little kippah to the clear-story cap, which completely changed the silhouette and solved the problem. You can only see it from the outside. One small change, which made a huge difference. Let's look at some other things. The two candelabra that you see on the walls, and the sacred Torah ornaments that come around in our Torah procession each week along with the Sifrei Torah. They all came from the former Sons of Jacob synagogue building. This was another visible way of honoring Sons of Jacob's history and their part in our history. To follow the Torah procession into the congregation, the former Sons of Jacob Gabbai, who was our first Gabbai, Sid Goldfarb, would tenderly place the Torah ornaments into the arms of young children who carried them around, and that's a sweet custom that still continues. Then there are the pillars, the famous pillars. In fact, they were a reflection of both our modest means and budget and the serendipity with which we were all blessed. At one difficult meeting of the building committee, the architects Michael and Jeremy informed us that with the sanctuary roof design, without internal supports, we couldn't afford it. It wouldn't support. The roof would not support us, and our budget wouldn't support the roof. So, they did have one idea which could work. So they assumed we wouldn't be happy with it, because it would block sight lines a little bit, and that was 4 pillars to hold up the roof from within the building. Ruth, who was the art historian in the group, was immediately enthralled, because this was, again, a reflection of Eastern European synagogues. The pillars also allowed the bima to reflect the sacred space of a chuppah, looking out on the congregation, but with open walls. We couldn't have planned it, but we sure loved it. Reflecting the value of an inclusive, egalitarian community on Shabbat, centered on Shabbat, we have a low bima and a sanctuary in the round. We would daven with others in community, and we wanted to see others' faces rather than the backs of their heads. Beth Jacob was the first fully accessible shul in Minnesota, built 2 years before the Americans with Disabilities Act requirements. And this accessibility includes our bima and our Aron Kodesh, both of which are wheelchair accessible. Those seats on which you're seated, they're pews rather than theater seats. And they also reflect the value of inclusion and engagement, so that children could sit with adults comfortably, individuals could take the space they needed rather than a specified space, and we wouldn't be separated from one another. And that also helped with the budget. We have a crying room. Children would always be welcome in our sanctuary, but this provided another option that would also make it easier for families. And we have no profusion of plaques. Everyone would be appreciated for whatever they were able to contribute, and we would not be reminded of the relative wealth and generosity of specific individuals. Names of various structures of the building, with the exception of the sanctuary and the chapel, would be identified on aesthetically framed display boards, recording donations in our entryway, rather than on the individual structures themselves throughout the building.
And there are other ways in which we hope foundational values are reflected. For example, the chapel and the library are combined, which gives the message that study and worship go hand in hand, and that one can be fully present in tefillah in many ways. Our commitment to modest, eloquent, plainness, and participation is indicated by the windows, clear rather than stained, taking advantage of the beauty of the outdoors, which was a preference expressed by the majority of congregants at the time the building was built, as well, once again, as a financial necessity. The sanctuary's design was designed to make expansion difficult. We were building a congregation built of strong personal bonds, more than numbers. And the original reading table, which is now in the chapel, was designed and built by congregants Henry Ortel, to David Spitzer, and Leonard Shapiro, all skilled furniture builders. In Henry Ortel's memoir, An Unbroken Chain, My Journey Through the Nazi Holocaust, he wrote, "In Germany, I witnessed the horrifying destruction of my and other synagogues. The chance now to actively involve myself and to watch the step-by-step creation of a new synagogue meant for me the exciting arrival of a moment in a cycle from destruction to creation. For me, this was gratifying. The Eitz Tree of Life in the front entryway was the work of many congregants of all ages, each taking a separate piece of the eggs to sand and smooth. Our commitment to community Hasidim is evident from our kitchen. From the first days in the building, our generously sized and well-equipped kitchen has been a source of sustenance for many of us during hard times, and for some of us whose hard times are present much of the time. Yet another place to form friendships and relationships as people come together to bake, to cook, to celebrate with one another.
We want to take note of Bud and Betty Sweet, whose involvement in those early days was critical to the success and durability of the congregation. Leonard has so beautifully described many of Bud's qualities. His values and qualities made him a role model for so many. His dogged eye on the goal and vision to create a community. His awareness of not only the vision, but also what needed to be done to make the vision happen. His equanimity to put together the merger of Sons of Jacob and new conservative congregation was no small challenge. Perhaps one greater than the merger he oversaw between two airlines to form Republic Airlines. In the face of some real challenges of various personalities, he hardly ever lost his cool. Bud's presence, his physical presence, he was always there. And the presence of modesty and quiet competence. And so when he made a request of you, you couldn't turn him down because he led by example.
It's not hard to imagine the role that Betty Sweet played either. She was a presence, a stabilizing influence, and a mother figure to many of us. Lori Smith, her daughter, wrote, Betty Sweet was certainly a founding mother. She was a stalwart presence in this congregation, taking on many of the household chores when we had no caretaker. If something needed to be done, it needed to be done, and she often did it, including cleaning the bathrooms with Bud's help. She set an example of strength and resolve for all members, not just the women, as we sought to become egalitarian. Betty stood firm with steel resolve when needed, and sat with comforting calm when someone was hurting. In so many ways, Betty personified the bridge between the old and the new, what was and what was coming. She showed we could change with the times without losing our identity. Together, Bud and Betty made a fantastic team. We were so lucky to have them both.
Ages, years, a time, a season. That was the rhyme. Now here's the reason.
Before I go on with the rhyme and the reason, I just want to take note of all of us up here on the Lima, who with others helped, beginning with a meeting of a larger group at our home before we started to fashion this narrative. This is a joint effort and involves not only what all who memories, the lessons that we learn, what we want to take away, what we learn from capturing all these memories, and what we're doing to preserve the values of the congregation. Though we shared common goals, each of us present at the beginning had our individual reasons for being part of this moment. In the same way, all who have come later had their own joys, have had their own reasons for joining. Because of young children just beginning their path to bar or bat mitzvah, because of proximity to their home, in order to say Kaddish after a recent family death, because they had a friend who was a member, the opportunity to connect with others of similar values, or simply because they heard nice things about Beth Jacob and Rabbi Allen. Community, community, community. Relationships, relationships, relationships. Ultimately, the story of Beth Jacob is the story of building a welcome community of Jews who shared values. Certainly, we come together for prayer, learning, and connection to others on Shabbat, Chagim, and daily minyanim, but the community exists 7 days a week. Each interaction, whether at a religious service, a study session, a committee meeting, a visit to console and support, kitchen activity, or a moment of sharing of joy, each interaction becomes an opportunity to find new ways to apply our values and to form and enhance relationships. Part of the magic of Beth Jacob, necessarily behind the scenes and unsung between rabbi and congregant, or congregant and congregant, is that we become a community of resources for each other. People willing to listen and be present. People we can feel comfortable turning to for advice and support. Our shared membership gives us the opportunity not only to learn about each other, but to learn from each other. Beth Jacob is, after all, a community of Jews. Even if we have not previously met, we know a little bit about each other. We can assume that we share common values, the obligation to do for others, to extend hospitality, to lead ethical lives, to attach the proper ethical weight to each of our activities. And the congregation provides us with the opportunity to discover these values if we have lost them. All of us who were there at the beginning are proud to have been part of that process, giving us the opportunity to be creative and to draw on the wisdom we learned in our previous shul experiences to help create this community. This shul has become far more than we ever imagined. For at its best, many transactions in the shul have built on and have drawn from our founding values. Unless you think that we proceeded from our founding moments without error or contention, we continue to encounter unanticipated challenges. We saw then and we see now the ever-present opportunity to ask, what can I learn? What did I learn from this dilemma, this problem, this interaction? What did I learn from this other person? We continue to broaden our experience, to figure things out, to learn and grow from experience. We see the shul as a safe place for dealing with respect and open-mindedness with dilemmas and people who have different views. We're thankful that we had the opportunity to be part of making the connection with Rabbi Allen, an ongoing partner with all who were there at the beginning and whose leadership has helped us become the community we are today. We hope that regardless of when you became part of Beth Jacob, you can also have the excitement of being there at the beginning, your own beginning. We all recognize that the story of Beth Jacob, like most stories, is never over, and each of us is part of that story. A final Bud story. This former airline president once slipped in conversation and referred to shul members not as congregants, but as passengers. It's not a bad metaphor. As Beth Jacob members, we are all on a lovely journey together. And our story is never over.